Hello and welcome to today's video. Now originally when I had scheduled the videos that I was going to be releasing a few months back, obviously this was not on the agenda, as who could have forecast that this would ever happen. However, I thought it was a really appropriate time to actually spend a video talking about teaching during this time. Everything that I'm going to be talking about is from my own experience, giving advice, and hopefully this will give you a sense of relief. I know that there's been times that you can kind of feel like with teaching that perhaps, is everybody going through this? Is teaching the same for everyone? And actually this video hopefully will just give you some guidance and perhaps a forum that you can provide suggestions to others towards what you have been doing during this time that has really helped you with your teaching journey. So everything that I'm going to be talking about is from my experience, and it's very much depending upon my subject, being a secondary school teacher, the amount of lessons that I teach, the school that I'm at, the resources, etc, etc. So without further ado, let's start today's video. So first and foremost, I'm going to talk about how I have found online learning. It's been hard. So I remember when we first got notified that obviously we were going into lockdown and we were going to have to create these online lessons. And I was like, how is that going to work? If anybody knows me, hopefully by now, or you've watched these videos, you'll know that I'm a drama teacher predominantly. So you don't need to know that much about what we teach in drama to know that it's a practical subject. And I was kind of sat there thinking, initially, how am I supposed to teach a practical subject? One, online, and two, at home when they're on their own. It's group practical work that we look at a lot of the time in drama. But we adapt, we move forward, and actually there's a lot of refreshing ideas and skills that I've been delivering during this time that I will actually take forward with me. So the first thing that I kind of realised was that adapting is essential, but not forgetting that you can teach still the same skills, but perhaps thinking about changing the format in the way that you do these so that they are accessible and engaging from home. So an example of this might be for Key Stage 3. Now, they aren't an exam year group, so say, for example, let's Year 7. So my Year 7s aren't an exam group. However, they have skills in drama that are at a foundation at the moment, and we're thinking about how we can develop them. So what I decided to do for Key Stage 3 and the department is that we created a scheme. Basically teaches them skills that we would usually look at in the concept of a group piece, but we wouldn't necessarily always be able to tackle individually based on the style and the format of lessons that they would usually be like in lesson. And actually, there's some real positives towards that. For example, script writing in drama. We don't always spend that much time learning about how to write a script because usually the emphasis is on practical group work. And during this time, we've been able to really develop our skills in Key Stage 3, for example, towards how we can create a script. The scheme that I created, for example, this half term is something called a process drama piece. So essentially they go through a story from lesson to lesson to lesson, and they complete tasks that fit along with the story that develop not only their skills but their awareness towards the journey and the message that that story is going to have. So we created a murder mystery project. So for example, one week they might design a set design based upon the finding out the location of where the murder took place. The next lesson might be a script based upon the detective talking towards the suspects. It goes on and on and on, you get the idea. And the one thing I've realised through this is that just because we are adapting in new ways does not mean that the pupils are disadvantaged at all. They are actually still picking up the same skills that we would use in the drama studio, but just in a different format. So obviously we've got to adapt. It's not like anybody's going to be sat there going, I don't think so. I'm not going to adapt. But it's thinking about adapting to fulfill skills and do activities that you might not always have time to necessarily do in the classroom, and making the most of that, essentially. Another really good top tip, and this is if you have Google Classroom or any platform that you can share resources with your pupils online, is pre-recorded lessons have been a lifesaver for me for many reasons. One, pupils seem to find instructions easier to access when they're both visual and they can hear it. What I mean by that is that I try to think of it as if I'm in the classroom, and any teacher watching this will completely agree. I'll explain the instructions to my class, and there will always be a pupil that says, "What's the task? What are we doing?" And that's okay. You know, you're meeting the needs of different pupils. Sometimes you might need to say it again or structure it in a different way. So the way I got around this is that rather than just typing out my instructions and providing it to students, that what we would do is we would deliver the lesson as we would normally deliver it on a PowerPoint and record ourselves talking over it. What the pupils really liked is that they were able to understand what we were thinking as we were saying it, if that makes sense. We could further elaborate on instructions that might not be within the words, but more explained by talking over them. And lastly, they could listen to them again. This is something that is so useful, perhaps when it comes towards GCSE and A-level classes, that perhaps you're teaching a concept, or you're delivering exam criteria, or you're going through a marked response, and you know that when they go into the next year that this content is still going to be very much applicable. Creating it as a recorded PowerPoint, they can look back at it at any time. And actually, the feedback that I found upon this is that pupils really appreciate the idea that they can hear you talking through the instructions, but also they can very easily access it again. And when it comes towards revision, a lot of pupils that I teach actually prefer to revise or recap on knowledge by watching and listening to something. So this isn't something that might work for everybody, but pre-recorded lessons have really helped me give pupils more of an insight towards tasks, deliver lessons, Google Classroom, to monitor work. I don't think I would be as positive right now if I hadn't have really taken advantage of creating pre-recorded lessons that I could schedule for pupils for the time of their lessons, and that they could re-watch and it be as close to the style of a lesson as it possibly could be. I know a lot of teachers have done live lessons as well online, where they've been on a Google Meet or a Zoom meeting and they've taught the class. I've done both. I've done live lessons and I've done pre-recorded lessons, and I think both of them are great. I think the pre-recorded lessons actually are something to really help us move forward as teachers, as, like I've said previously, it's something that pupils can come back to at any point. So, if it's a case of a pupil is struggling on a concept, you can say that you can refer them towards this video that they can access. Workload. This is something that a lot of people have been asking about, and I know something that my colleagues have been discussing, and other people that I know that are teachers, and workload has been very different at the moment. I can't speak on behalf of all teachers, because I know that depending upon your circumstance, the workload will be different. I know for me, I'll be really honest, that the workload it's been high that I expected, but the things that I've done to help myself manage it have made it more manageable. I know now, reflecting back on things, that if I didn't monitor things as much or utilise platforms that I had, that I think I would feel a lot different going into the summer of this year and moving forward. So for example, I've previously said pre-recorded lessons have really helped me not only teach the pupils but help with that workload. I'm still live during the day, I still have live lessons, but that concept's really, really helped me. Also, tracking documents. Now again, this very much depends upon the school and the platforms that you use, but I've been using tracking documents so that I can track the work that pupils have been completing, but also the quality of the work. And it's for the benefits of both myself and the pupils. For me, it allows me moving forward then to think about the work they've obviously completed, but thinking about the content that I then need to teach, or perhaps the methods that I need to go and adjust around. So this will be depending upon what the pupils will need. And everybody's in a different position right now. I think pupils, staff, adults, children, everywhere, regardless if this isn't in a school setting anyway, I think that everybody has dealt with this obviously very differently. That doesn't mean, I'm not trying to be patronising in that sense. It's something that I'm mindful of, and I know that I'm trying to look after myself as well as doing my job, and it's being mindful of that from the pupils as well. I know that teachers, we always have the pupils' interests at heart. Teaching, as I've previously said, is not just about teaching pupils. That's something we've learned a lot during this time. But I think it's being mindful that when we move forward, you want to move forward in the best way that you physically can. And I think pupils' mindsets, a lot have really changed during this time. And it's interesting when I've been in school with year 10s and year 12s, how coming back into school, it feels like a shock, but they've really missed school. I know that a lot of people would think, oh, kids don't like school, but I don't think it's just the learning from school, it's how school works that pupils have missed. So tracking is important so that when it comes towards planning ahead or planning for the future, you know which areas perhaps you would want to go over, but thinking about the needs of the pupils that you've got within the classroom, because even if you've got a top, a middle or a bottom set, everybody's dealt with this differently, so we've really got to adapt towards the needs of the pupils within the classroom now more than ever, essentially. When it comes to workload as well, one of the ways that I've really tried to help myself when it comes towards teaching during lockdown is practicing what I preach to the pupils. So within my form and all the classes that I teach, we explain that lessons should only take as long as they would normally take within lessons. So if they would have an hour for maths, it should only take an hour. The school day is only at a certain time in the day. And I know that some pupils that might have to shift, but depending upon circumstances. But practicing what I preach in the sense of making sure that I have breaks and that I look after myself. I've actually been spending this time exercising a lot more, and I've noticed that I needed to exercise in the sense that actually when I'm at school, I'm moving around a lot. I always keep a track every day how many steps I do, and it's phenomenal to see the amount of steps I do even when I'm just if I'm in the same classroom for an afternoon, let alone on in a normal school day. So when I've been at home, I know that mind and body are one, and I've been trying to exercise to help my own mental health and continuing with hobbies and having that rest time, because you can only do so much. We say to the pupils, so why are we not practicing that ourselves? We've got to take after ourselves. We look after pupils and we've got to look after ourselves. If we're not looking after ourselves, we're not going to be able to do the best job that we physically can do. So this has been quite a chatty video today. Hopefully I've tried to be as authentic and as real as possible. As I'm recording this, I've just finished kind of my work day, teaching from home, online, and You can probably tell that as this video goes on, I'm tired, and this is the end of the academic year anyway. You know, as teachers, we are tired when it comes towards the end of the academic year regardless. But just know that you're doing such an amazing job. We can do this. We can do this. We've accomplished how much so far. We can just keep going. As always, if there's any suggestions or any questions that you have, please comment below. I will try to get back as soon as possible. But I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.